This video is about helping you figure out whether collaborative divorce is right for you. By way of brief background, in the old days, all couples who were going through separation and divorce would use the court system. Nowadays, there are more choices available. There are a variety of process options, and it's not necessary that you have to go to court. Collaborative process, or CP for short in particular, specifically excludes court, and many couples find that collaborative process, that CP, is relatively fast, cost-effective, and more amicable as compared to other process options for separation and divorce. So how do you know whether CP is right for you? There are really three very important things to look at, three criteria to test whether you and your spouse will be a good fit for CP. The three things that you should look at in terms of as a self-assessment as a couple, they are as follows. Three words which I'll go on to explain by talking about what each of these things is, what it isn't, and also why it matters and why it's important specifically to CP. So the three things are honesty, ownership, and conversation. Okay, so let's start with honesty. What is honesty? By honesty, I am referring specifically to a commitment by each of you to be fully honest about all your financial information and documents, and to be forthright in providing that fully throughout CP process for your separation and divorce. What it isn't is that there is no expectation necessarily that you and your spouse always have been honest about everything. For example, it's possible, and for many, even if let's say there has been infidelity in the marriage, which is a very serious kind of dishonesty, even in such situations, couples like that have been able to use CP very effectively. But really what it is about, again, is it's about financial honesty specifically in this process. Why is it important? It's important because if either lawyer detects that their client is not living up to this commitment, then that lawyer will terminate the process, which will force both of you to hire new lawyers and to go through a new process, which is obviously a very expensive thing to happen. So this is the first test, and if you are both committed to being honest in this way, then okay, so you've got this first of three tick boxes to see in terms of whether you're a good fit for CP. The next tick box is in terms of ownership. What do I mean by ownership? I mean by ownership, it means owning the value judgments, the judgment calls, the sort of very tough decisions that will have to be made during this process. What it isn't is, and this will help clarify what I mean by ownership, this isn't an expectation that you're going it alone in this process, because there is a settlement team helping you in CP, including at least, the settlement team will at least include one lawyer for each of you, and there may be other professionals depending on whether they are needed. And your lawyer will be very helpful in terms of guiding you and advising you and making recommendations. At the same time, why is this idea of ownership important? Because relative to other process options, there is a strong expectation in CP that clients be very active participants throughout the process, and that there is an understanding that clients may sometimes that, let's say, you and your spouse may end up coming to an agreement which looks very different and is much more customized as compared to what the court might say. And so therefore ownership and being willing to commit and take ownership of those very tough decisions is very crucial to CP. And if both of you are committed to taking ownership and being active participants in this manner, so then you've got two of your tick boxes. Now, what's the third tick box? The third tick box is in terms of conversation. What is this idea of conversation? Conversation means that each of you needs to be committed to both speaking and to listening. Now, what is this not? This is not about if there's a situation of high conflict, which obviously can, if this is a high conflict relationship, that can certainly mean that it's become more difficult for you to both speak to one another or in front of one another and listen to one another. But your lawyer can kind of help you overcome that. And as well, it's even possible for some couples where there is a history of abuse, sometimes that this CP can still work for such couples because the process can be customized in certain ways to ensure that there are still conversations, that both people get an opportunity to both speak and listen to one another. Okay, so we said that conversation, this third aspect of the test, is about making sure that each of you speaks and listens to one another. So why is that important? The reason why this is important is because in CP there's a strong emphasis that both of you get an opportunity to lay out what your ultimate interests, goals, hopes, and dreams and fears are in connection with the divorce. And it's important that both of you, each of you needs to actually lay those things out, but each of you also needs to hear and understand needs to hear and understand what the spouse you're separating from has to say on that same subject. That both of you needs to feel heard and understood about that, and this is really key in terms of how it works. This is not about you agreeing with one another, but there is a strong expectation for both of you to both speak and to very actively listen to one another. And if you are both of you are prepared to commit to conversation, that each of you is committed to speaking up about these things, but in terms of speaking up about your what it is that you're looking for in divorce, even in situations where it's in front of the spouse you're separating from, which is going to be part of CP, and also to listening when your spouse talks about those things. Then you've got that third tick box. So to recap, the three things that both of you need to be committed to, and if you are committed to, CP can work very well, and I would recommend you look into it further. It's again, it's about honesty in terms of the finances. It's about taking ownership of the key judgment calls, which will ultimately be yours rather than the lawyers or other professionals. And it's also about a commitment to conversation, that each of you needs to be committed to both speaking to what's truly important to you about this process, and also to listening. And if both of you can be committed to all three of those ingredients, then it's CP will probably work very well for you. And I would encourage you to investigate further this process that can be a very helpful process for you and your family going through this difficult time.